live on this topic today. We are going to get right into it. We are chatting today and we are live streaming, y'all. What no one tells you about starting over in healthcare. And this topic is really important because I started over. I started over in my 20s. So if you are in your 30s, if you are in your mid 30s, early 20s, 40s, whatever it is, let's go to the chat and talk about it because what no one tells you about starting over is really important. And I wish I knew these things. We're going to be talking about it. I've recently posted a podcast that goes live on Thursday that's going to go into depth on this topic because I got a DM that asked, I have a degree already, but that degree is not serving me anymore. So the individual wants to know, should they go to school for something in healthcare? And if they should, what should they go to school for? Which is a great question because a lot of people wonder, what in the world should I go to school for? I'm in my mid 30s. I've got a family. I'm working. I've got debt. How do I know? Because I don't have a lot of time to play around. So for me, I'm going to tell you a brief story about me. I started radiology school as an adult. I did not go to radiology school from high school, straight from high school. I was already living on my own. I had a whole life, a whole apartment, 2 bedrooms to be exact, all by myself, living on my own, taking care of things. And life happened. How did I get to this point 20 something years later, working in healthcare? I'm going to help you to see how it is possible because I'm going to tell you, I didn't really understand what I was getting myself into. It was a struggle. So the struggle was having to relocate to wait to get back into another healthcare program. Now, mind you, I still had a car payment. I had to finish out my lease after not being able to stay in my apartment because I got ill, had to quit my job. I had a full-time job. I was in school at the time, had to unenroll in a radiology program. And I'm thinking to myself, I finally got into this program. Am I going to be able to get into another one? And if so, am I going to be able to afford it? That is so important. So how many of you out there have wondered this same question as the person who asked me? Can they go back to school for something in healthcare? For something in healthcare. Sorry, my computer was asking me to download something. To go back to school for something in healthcare if they are already in their mid 30s. It is a struggle. I struggled with trying to decide if I was going to be able to do that. And to be honest with you, I don't know how I did, but I just moved back home, saved everything I could save. I drove trucks for a year to save my money and be able to afford to be able to live because school was going to take up all of my time and all of my money. And I chose to go to a private school, which was even more expensive, but it was worth it in the end because in this podcast that I have that really goes into depth on this topic that was asked of me in my DMs, should you go back to school for something in healthcare in your mid 30s? I'm telling my story of how I did in my 20s. My husband did in his late 20s. And yes, we still had bills. It is possible for those of you wondering, is it not possible? It is possible to go to a full-time program. And now there are so many programs out there that are online, hybrid, all kind of stuff out there. But going to a healthcare profession really changed my life. I went from standing on my feet all day doing hair, which I enjoyed, but it was very taxing on my body. And it didn't give me flexibility. I wasn't able to move wherever I wanted to and still keep my clientele. When you move, you got to start over with the clientele. So that was like a bummer in the career that I chose. And in this podcast that I have coming out Thursday that talks about this topic a lot deeper, it's going to help you guys kind of figure out how to make decisions. I use a four-step theory there on how to make decisions to go back, especially as an adult who has responsibilities, has people depending on you, has debt, how to go back to a full-time healthcare program and making a decision that you won't regret in the future. So the problem that many people feel is they feel stuck. They feel like there are so many options out there. How do I choose this option or that option? Tell me what you guys think. Some people feel like it's too late. You listen to other people that may say, yeah, it's too late to go back to school. You've missed your chance. Don't listen to them. do not listen to them. I had people telling me when I was going back that why would you go back to school and start over? What do you mean start over? Life changed. I've got to leave that behind. And yeah, I got to move to another state and start over again. But I was able to do that by just kind of not rushing things, not forcing things, but making a plan and making sure that I followed through on that plan. And that's how things were able to work out. I zeroed in, saved my money, and was able to, be able to stick with the plan of going to a radiologic technology school. So you don't feel like it's too late. Some people say you don't want to waste money or waste time. That's something that you do want to be careful of. And this podcast episode coming up that breaks down this 4-step theory that I found that worked for me in going back to school in my mid-20s. If you're in your mid-30s, 40s, 50s, however old you are going back to school, this 4-step theory helped me and my husband to stick to the plan. And the plan was to finish school and choose a healthcare career that had longevity, that gave us flexibility, and that allowed us to enjoy life and live. That's what I would say, and didn't break the bank at the same time. Like we weren't out there. Now we were broke as smoke when we were in school, but it paid off later. And, when you're in school for these programs, it's going to be a struggle. But to me, learning about what program you want to go into and making sure it's the right one for the long run and the long haul is very important to you, not wasting money and wasting time. When I say wasting money, whether it's loan money, whether it's financial aid, whether it's money you're paying from you're paying for out of your own pocket, or your employer is giving you tuition reimbursement. No need to waste that money and waste your time by choosing a program that you say, well, I wish instead of going for MRI, now I can only do MRI. I wish I would have gone ahead, got my prereqs, and done a radiology technology program, right? So these are the things, the steps that podcast is really going to take you. So if you aren't signed or subscribed to my podcast, you can find it right here on YouTube. It's on my playlist. Go ahead and subscribe there to my podcast. It is a wonderful resource. It is a top 5% radiology podcast, so different from others. It is not run by a doctor. It's run by an actual technologist myself. And I talk about topics that, whether you're in the profession or wanting to get into the profession, or you never heard about the profession, that podcast really touches on a lot of things when it comes to whether you feel stuck in your career, whether you feel stuck in healthcare, whether you didn't know about radiology, whether you have an upcoming medical imaging study getting done and you want to know from a technologist, how is this exam going to be done? What should you expect? And the third thing, the problem or reason people feel stuck is you wonder if starting over is even possible. I know I did, because when I had to unenroll from that radiology program that I got into so easily after years of doing prereqs and working full time, I was like, oh my goodness, I got to start over. Is it even possible? Because now I got to move to another state. I don't have a job. This tuition is way more expensive than the community college I was going to go to. How am I going to do this? These are all things that real people wonder. So I've told you my personal story when it comes to how I had to close my business, go back to school. I got accepted to a radiology program. I got ill, had to leave, sell everything, move back home, drive trucks for a year, yada, yada, yada. I had to hit the reset button. Some of you are going to have to do that too. If you're watching this, you probably had to hit the reset button and you're wondering what no one tells me about going back to school in my mid-30s if I want to go for somebody healthcare. My podcast is going to do that. Those 4 things are going to be what I just talked about. It's never too late. Don't waste your money or your time by choosing the right program that works for you long term, not quick. A lot of people are like, how can I quickly get an MRI? Don't fall for the quick schools. Don't fall for you don't have to take prereqs. This will be easier for you. If that works for you long term, but think long term, because what no one tells you is that depending on the school you choose for a healthcare program, that school may not be accredited by an agency that will allow you to work at certain hospitals. I have a video on that. One of my videos explains that take, for instance, if you go to a radiology program, that's not a JCERT program, JRCERT program. You cannot work for the VA. You can't work for the VA. I don't think people know that. So that is so important. That is so, so important for people to understand that what no one tells you when you're trying to get in healthcare programs is the school you choose can either catapult your career or hinder your career. It can either catapult your career or hinder your career. So don't always go for the quick. Don't always go for the, they told me I don't have to do prereqs. Think beyond, because if you go back to my podcast, a couple of Rad Tech's podcasts, there is a person who is on my podcast, and that person talked about, I'm trying to add a poll on here. I wanted to see about a poll, but it's not letting me. But anyway, one of the things that I would say is that person took too many steps, and that steps, like she said, it hindered her career. And I say that because, okay, there we go. I just pinned my book, a couple of Rad Techs. Myself, I wrote a children's book, Rachel the Radiographer. I don't know if you guys know that. I meant to say that at the beginning. Be sure to check it out. You can grab a copy for yourself, your kids, your local library, your schools, and also for your radiology waiting rooms if you guys work in imaging. It is the cutest, hardest hardback cover book, and one of the first written like it. One of the first in a series. There's going to be multiple books coming out. This is just not a one-hit wonder, y'all. People are loving this book, so get your own copy. But no one tells people a lot of times when they go to healthcare programs to understand the choice you make in the school you go to can determine where you work, literally in the state you work. So on my podcast, this individual worked in a state that allowed them to do radiology, nuclear medicine. That is a primary pathway no matter where you work. You can do it, be a nuclear medicine tech without being a radiology technologist. Okay, certain criteria, you have to have a degree. She had a biology degree. I think she was going pre-med, chose not to, went for nuclear medicine. Okay, she went to a school down in Florida. Well, then she decided she wanted to do CAT scan, because nuclear medicine and CAT scan work hand in hand. But you must go to radiology technology school in majority states in order to operate a machine that gives radiation. That is the rule everywhere. Until she was on my podcast, I didn't know that people did CAT scan in only a few states who didn't go to school for radiology. That was new to me. I didn't think you could give radiation without, especially on a CT scanner, without going to school for radiology and then becoming certified in CT. So that was new. And she found out when she moved to another state that she couldn't do CT in that state. They were like, no, ma'am. She was like, I was shocked. And that's where I say the things that people don't tell you when you choose healthcare careers can stifle your career. So before you choose a career that is, maybe this state says you can do it, what if your significant other wants to move to another state and you got to go with your family, or your parents somewhere, something happens and you got to go with them? You got to make sure you can get a job in that state. So some states require, in order for you to work at certain hospitals or get a state license, that you go to certain schools. Some schools, they will not accept your schooling to get their license. Now, you can get your ARRT credentials, but that is totally different from a state license. And I think people get confused. So this is another thing. Yeah, so basic x-ray license, yes. Certain states, yes, they have basic x-ray license. That's different. This person had a nuclear medicine. They never went to radiology school. They never took an x-ray course. They were nuclear medicine technologists. And then they went to a school that let them do CT. So that was different. A lot of states have like limited medical radiation radiology technologists called LMRTs. Medical assistants in many states take a education course, and they can take a test, and then they can take basic x-rays at doctor's offices and clinics. That is totally different. So the one on my podcast, she was a nuclear medicine technologist, and the school she went to was only in Florida, though, that let her do CT. When she went to move to California, California said, no, 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 no. You cannot do, California is no joke. I have a California license. It is no joke. I'm gonna tell you, it is no joke. You got to have a license to do all of it. They don't care, and they watch everything like a hawk. And nothing's worth me losing my license over. Not one thing. Not one thing. So I abide by the rules. But yeah, so those are all the things that, I like for people to understand when it comes to entering healthcare, especially when you're in your 30s. You don't have time to play around. I know I didn't have time to play around. When I went back to school, it was like, no, I know what I need to do. I am not going to waste this. I can't waste money. I can't waste time because I don't have another chance. And that's one thing that I encourage people to do your research before you just jump right into a school because they tell you it's quick. They tell you you don't have to do prereqs. Be sure, check the school out. Make sure people actually pass that school's exams. Make sure you're not going to be stuck with debt because you can be stuck with private loans and the school could close down and you're still responsible. Those are all the things people don't tell you when you go to healthcare programs, especially as older adults getting back into school and going to healthcare programs. There are so many schools, private and public, out there. People don't understand the fine print and understand that you could be left holding the bag literally when the school closes. So how can you avoid those things? Well, any school can close. Any school can close, whether they're accredited by JRCRT, anybody, they can close. But the good thing I tell people when it comes to the JRCRT programs is if one of those schools close and they're JCERT accredited, you can just jump over to another program. You don't have to wait. You don't have to start over. They will accept all your credit hours and all of your coursework that you've already done. But if you go to a program that's not JCERT, you run the risk of most likely no school is going to take you in and you got to start all over. That is not something that you feel like doing or want to do in your 30s. I'm sorry. It's not in your mid 20s, 30s, or 40s, right? So be sure to do your research. I hope this live was helpful. It was definitely to bring awareness to those that are going to a program in healthcare because there are so many options out there. There are so many programs out there, private and public, and they can be very expensive, which unfortunately people have gotten into a lot of debt and got a bad experience going into healthcare, especially when they're trying to start over. And that is the purpose. So if you guys love this type of content, I appreciate the engagement. I appreciate the comments. And I appreciate all of you that have given a thumbs up. You've checked out the book, click the link on the book, and you are here for this live. Be sure to check out the podcast for an extended conversation on this topic. It drops on Thursday at 8 a.m. So please be sure to check that out. We got one last comment. You are right. I cannot perform x-rays, Indiana. Yeah, now I'm 47 and going back for the prereqs for the Rad Tech program. Thanks very much. You are welcome. Yes, so you have a basic x-ray license, medical assistant. Indiana, yeah, it is a licensure state. A lot of states, I think it's about 50 states that are licensure, which require radiology technologists to have an ARRT, which means you have to go to a 2-year program. There are about 2 or 3 states. They're trying to change the laws that do not allow anyone without an ARRT, even in doctor's offices or clinics, to be able to take x-rays. So check out that podcast. It goes into more depth of how to really navigate your career when you're trying to choose. Knock those prereqs out. They are worth it. It is worth it to be a radiology technologist, in my opinion. After 20 years of doing so, I enjoy it. It has done well by me. No one's rich by going to school for radiology technology, but we can at least feed our families. We have consistent work. We have multiple shifts we can work. You can work weekends. You can work nights. You can work second shift, first shift. You can work first and third shift. I've done it before. I've worked a first shift job and a third shift job. I've worked a weekend job and a 312 job. So you have so many options. That is what I tell people. Give yourself the most options when it comes to your career, especially if you could start with a 2-year. And that podcast is going to help you to figure out how to make some connections and navigate beyond just that 2-year. Because there's so much to it. And then I'm going to make a series out of that. So let me know if you guys have any ideas, any comments, questions. Please leave them in the chat here or in the comments once this live ends. And thank you again. Have a great evening, and be sure to check out the podcast, which goes live Thursday. And you can catch up on any of the podcasts. A Couple of Rad Texts is the podcast name here on YouTube. Be sure to check out my book, Rachel the Radiographer. It is a hardcover children's book. It is amazing. It is for sale, and we definitely have some deals for you if you want to buy one for yourself, buy one for your nieces and nephews, for your schools, whatever, your radiology imaging departments or your hospitals. You can reach out to me for bulk orders. So until then, you guys have a great evening, and thanks again.